All cattle, no hat. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the Black Ops 2 competitive meta and the theory behind it. We'll also be looking at an example class setups for both CMG and the traditional rule set. We'll start by taking a look at CMG classes first. These classes are very restrictive due to the rule set. If you play XP or wager matches though, then these are the classes that you will use. There isn't very much diversity in playstyles since everything is banned. These classes that you see are pretty much all you can run. There are a few variations to these classes, such as running a Semtex instead of a frag. You could run extreme conditioning instead of dexterity on certain maps. Using a pistol as a secondary is an option on a select few AR classes, but it's not recommended. These alternative options are mostly preference though. After going through the CMG classes, we'll talk about the true beauty that is the BO2 competitive meta. I can't go straight into the traditional class setups from 2013 without talking about the theory behind them beforehand. There are certain map demands, general rules, and logic behind countering players that you must understand before you can create a class. I know that when I mention theory, it might turn some of you off. Don't worry about that. I'll do my best to explain it simply and thoroughly. It truly is as easy to understand as rock, paper, scissors. I'm being serious, this meta is based off that game. It follows the same rules as rock, paper, scissors. Starting off, you need to know that there are a lot of restrictions within the class setups for CMG. So many restrictions in fact that it's easier to mention what's allowed than what isn't. On screen, you'll see a list of everything that's allowed. You can only use two primary weapons, which are either the M8A1 or the MSMC. For secondaries, you can only use the B23R, the 3-round burst pistol. For perks, you are only allowed to use lightweight, toughness, dexterity, extreme conditioning, and dead silence. For utility, you can either run a frag or a Semtex, and you are only allowed one stun. You aren't allowed to double up on stuns. I'll show the list of wildcards and attachments since they're a bit longer. As you can see, you are very limited to what you can and can't use. There's hardly any diversity in weapon usage, with the only one AR and SMG being playable. There is no flak jacket, which means grenades have a larger impact. Same goes for no tactical mask, which means stuns also have a larger impact. EMPs, smokes, and trophy systems aren't allowed either, which drastically changes the way the game is played. Now there is a rule set option that you can change on the CMG website when scheduling a match. You can allow these certain things. Right now we're just talking about the base CMG settings which have these disabled. So we're not going to talk about that. We're just going to assume that what we're talking about is that these are disabled. This rule set is very restrictive, but it isn't bad. It makes the gameplay more similar to BO1 rather than traditional BO2. Personally, I don't like this rule set. It strips away the quality from this masterpiece of a game, which was its diverse meta. Throughout the course of the year, pro players were seen using 3 assault rifles, 4 submachine guns, 1 shotgun, 1 sniper, 7 unique types of utility, a crossbow, and a riot shield. I'm sure I'm forgetting something like light machine gun or something else. All of these different weapons and utility had a specific strategic purpose and added value to the meta. I'll leave a link below that proves that even a crossbow and a riot shield have a place in competitive. While it was one of the last tournaments of the year, the MLG Fall Invitational, Optic vs Unite were playing Raid SnD. Unite used the riot shield to be able to push up through the middle of the map safely. They also used a crossbow to blow up the gray van on B side of the map. It's really interesting to watch, so I recommend you check it out.
All right, so it's been 3 straight defensive rounds. Can one of these teams win their offensive round? Optic, they're trying to do that. You see the double trophies, the crossbow blowing up the van at the start, and Parasite in position to get an early pick with the sniper. There it is. Doesn't get easier.
Hit marker.
Nate Shot is a superhero, surviving. Scumpy now challenging. How did Nate Shot just eat that bullet, man?
He didn't eat lunch.
With me saying that, I still think it has a place in the game. It makes it simpler to play, which puts a higher emphasis on gameplay rather than strategy. The skill floor is lowered minimally, while the skill ceiling is greatly lowered. An argument could be made that it removes any randomness from the game, but I highly disagree with that viewpoint. The original meta wasn't littered with a vast sea of randomness. It was filled with strategic diversity of playstyles and counters to those playstyles. I'll give a disclaimer that these CMG classes are only for SnD. If you choose to play respawn modes, they would be very similar. You would trade Dead Silence for Dexterity since you won't need Silent Footsteps in respawn modes. Extreme Conditioning will get more use since you'll have an extra point or two without using Dead Silence. You could use a Simtex rather than a frag since it's quicker to throw. Simtexes become more valuable since they don't disrupt your tempo as much. Running a pistol becomes a viable option. The utility you get from having a secondary as an AR in respawn is greater than in SnD. These are the only changes you would make to your classes. You can't change much when there isn't really much to change. Here are the specific CMG classes that I use. You'll see that I have 5 classes that are named Anchor, Slayer, Support, OBJ, and Counter. The first 4 classes are for each of the roles in the game. The 4 classes are ordered from slowest to fastest playstyle, the Anchor class being the slowest and the OBJ class being the fastest. They are in order from slowest to fastest playstyle for a very important reason. When I'm playing and need to switch a class, I don't want to think about which class I should use. I want to think about whether I need to play faster or slower. This eliminates me from having to make decisions and react based on what the game is asking of me. I then switch my class and adapt to the speed of the playstyle. This helps me get into the mindset of how I need to play rather than reacting to what I think I want. I'm not going to go in depth on the 4 different roles. That will be an entirely separate video that'll be a part of the Constitution series. Every class will have lightweight, toughness, and dead silence. I'll refrain from mentioning them for the remainder of the CMG portion of this video. Both the Anchor and the Slayer class are very similar. They both run an M8A1 with red dot sight, quick draw, and stock. The difference between them is that on my Anchor class, I run a frag and a stun, while on my Slayer class, I run dexterity instead. A frag provides me with kill potential. Even if I only get a hit marker, then I'm still getting some information of a player's location. A stun provides me with less kill potential, but more information. A stun helps me set up a kill to happen, but it's not as guaranteed as a frag. It does have a larger blast radius, so the information it gives is greater. I often use it to stun check if players are rushing a certain area of the map at the start of a round. I will use the Anchor class if I want to try and get a nade kill off spawn. The effects are cumulative, meaning that if you have a teammate who you both coordinate stuns and nades, it can be more effective. I'll also use this if I simply just want the utility. I don't have to use them off spawn for them to be effective. I can stall a bomb plant or defuse, I can gather information mid-round. There's lots of uses for them as long as you actually use them. The negatives of using utility are that once you throw a frag or a stun, you are telling the enemy where you are. They may not know your exact position, but if they hear a nade explode, they can use deductive reasoning to narrow down where you could be. For example, at the start of a round, the enemy's on defense and hears a grenade explode near B bomb. They can deduce certain bits of information from this explosion. The first is that you are potentially attacking B bomb trying to plant. You are doing it from your side of the map since it's the start of the round. If you aren't trying to plant, you are at least making a presence on that side of the map. The last thing is that you don't have a frag anymore, which is something that they can play around. They're putting together information they are receiving to narrow down your position. Let's say it's mid-round and they hear a grenade explode. At the minimum, information they can gather is that by drawing an imaginary radius around where the grenade exploded, the player who threw the grenade can only be so far away from the actual explosion. There's a limited distance that a player can throw and then run. This helps you narrow down to where a player actually is. Same goes for throwing a stun. When you run any lethal and tactical, you are letting the enemy know where you are. For the Slayer class instead, I run dexterity. Its use varies based on the map. If you're going to be climbing or running around corners a lot, then dexterity is very useful. Let's take 2 maps for example, Slums and Raid. On Slums, you aren't really climbing that much. There's a few areas where it can be useful to climb quicker, but those are infrequent. It's also more of an open map, which means that there aren't many corners in comparison to a map like Raid. On Slums, you might want to run a frag and a stun because of these reasons. The openness allows you to have a higher success rate with landing a nade and a stun. Dexterity has a greater use on a map like Raid. the value you get from using it is higher because of all the mantling opportunities. Since there are more corners on raid, having your sprint out time lower because of dexterity increases its value. A lot of deciding which class to use is map dependent. The overall deciding factor though is the speed in which you intend to play. Let's move on to the support and OBJ classes. They are both very similar in the fact that I run an MSMC with long barrel and quick draw. The support class runs dexterity, while the OBJ class runs extreme conditioning. Dexterity is an overall better perk to use except for two situations. If you are needing to get to a location first, or without being seen, then extreme conditioning is better. That's more of a benefit of using this perk, but I personally wouldn't run it just for that reason. If you are running a specific strategy where using it is needed to get first blood, then I would say it's okay to use occasionally, but not to rely on. The main reason for usage is that you can flank much faster. It allows you to play further away from your team and without feeling like you were too far away. You can close a gap on a flank or regroup much quicker because of this perk. A general rule is that if you don't know why exactly you want to use extreme conditioning, then don't use it. Especially do not use it on an AR. It's not worth it. Everything else just has such greater value than using extreme conditioning on an AR. I see it way too often when playing CMGs. Please do not use extreme conditioning on an AR just so you can spray through a wall. Overall, the expected value you get from using it is not worth it. Please do not use it. That's my little PSA. Do not use extreme conditioning on an AR. That's it. I'm done preaching about it. If I see you using it, I will win the game. I will win, period. I'm just going to win because you don't know what you're doing if you're using extreme conditioning on an AR. Do not use it. Okay, my little rant is over. Let's go back. If you aren't utilizing that extra sprint time, then you're wasting the value of the perk. You are much better off running dexterity for general use. The other differences are that I use a frag on my support class. On my OBJ class, I use a Simtex. It's faster to throw and I can use it in a different way. I also don't want to use a frag with extreme conditioning because it slows me down. If I have a set amount of time to get to a specific area, then I can't waste it by throwing a frag. Those first four classes were aligned with the four roles within the game. The last class that I have is my counter class. In CMGs, you can't really counter a playstyle because everything is banned. So instead, what I did is put a third attachment on my MSMC. Using stock on an SMG makes you move faster while ADSing compared to when you're not. If you use this in combination with dexterity, it allows you to have the best possible class for slaying. If you're okay without having a frag or a stun, I would highly recommend using this class. This is my go-to class when I play 2v2 CMGs with my buddy Yo Alpha. Running stock on an SMG is severely underrated, but it's honestly the most overpowered class that you can have. I'll give you a couple alternative variations to the class that I use. If you're playing on a map with a lot of walls, then you could substitute Quick Draw for FMJ on the M8A1. The value of FMJ goes down if you aren't playing in a 4v4 match. The value of FMJ is not that you can shoot through walls. That's the purpose. The value is how many players you have in the game and how much ammo you have. If you have more players in the game, you have more opportunities to use FMJ. The amount of ammo that you have allows you to take advantage of those opportunities. The next variation that you could use is a pistol. Similar to FMJ, the value of the pistol goes down with the fewer amount of players you have in a game. You should only run a pistol on an AR to be used as a backup option. It should only be used in cases of emergencies. In SnD, the value of a pistol is less because you won't find yourself in an emergency type situation where you run out of ammo completely. You'll rarely be in a completely unavoidable situation where you'll need to use a pistol in order to stay alive. It just doesn't happen. You usually can just back up and survive long enough to reload or pick up another gun. Even if you run a pistol, you can go an entire game without using it. That's it. That's everything that I have for the CMG classes. They're very restrictive and there's not much variety to them. You can use any one of these classes and be perfectly fine on any map. I mentioned before that we can't even talk about classes until we dissect the true beauty of the BO2 meta. The reason for this is I can tell you what to use, but you won't know when or why to use it. blindly running a class that you think is good because you do well with it is different from running a class that is good because it supplies what the game is demanding of it. Let's look at the game of rock, paper, scissors. We all know how to play this game, but if for some reason you don't, then I'll explain it. Rock is countered by paper, covering it. Paper is countered by scissors, cutting it. Scissors is countered by rock, smashing it. It's a perfect gameplay loop where every object counters and gets countered. With BO2, it's a bit more complex, but the idea is still very simple. When talking about the theory behind BO2, we'll break down dependent variables, independent variables, and counters. Let's make a list of all the dependent variables that we are trying to counter. They'll be shown on screen now. Dependent variables are constant, meaning that they don't or can't change. They're the variables that we're using to measure for this theory. These variables are specifically what we are trying to counter. You'll see that dependent variables are the things that we can't change. Concepts like maps, modes, and effects in the games are all things that we can't change. For maps, we can't change how maps are designed. The range that gunfights can be taken are set, the cover provided never changes, the movement demanded by these maps will always remain the same. The same goes for modes. We can't change the value of either a player's life or how much an objective is worth. The value of both of these are strictly determined by the rules within the game mode. Then there's also the effects that you'll encounter that you can't change. You have the ability to counter resistances such as explosive damage or slows. You can adapt to the movement allowed by the map by adjusting the speed in which you maneuver around the map. You can allow or deny the information present within the game. Any utility that provides hit markers will give information of a player's whereabouts. Dead silence denies footstep sounds coming from your character. Hardwired makes you immune to EMPs, which prevents a loss of information. The effects within the game do not change. On screen, I'll show a list of all the independent variables. These are variables that you can change in response to the dependent variables. You'll notice that all of these variables are all things that you can change within the Pick 10 Create a Class system. Variables such as weapons, attachments, perks, and utility are all things that you have control of. Now that we have an understanding of both dependent and independent variables, let's look at how you can actually use them in-game. Starting with the maps, let's look at range. There are 4 different ranges that we'll be evaluating: long, medium, close, and CQB, which is just extremely close range gunfights. Based on the frequency of each range in combination with your role, this will determine what weapon you will use. The M8A1 is great in medium to long range. The AN94 is good in close, medium, and long range, acting as a decent all-around weapon. The MSMC is great in close and good in medium ranges. The Scorpion is great in CQB and good in close ranges. All of these weapons can be used outside of their desired ranges, but they do best when they play inside of their mentioned ranges. Let's take a look at some of the other usable meta or previously used meta weapons. The FAL was good at close and great in medium to long ranges. The time to kill was so fast because of its fire rate, so they had to nerf it. I can't remember if it got banned or if it wasn't viable anymore. The MP7 is good at close and medium ranges. The purpose of playing with a weapon like this is its accuracy. You were able to kill players off headies much easier than if you were using an MSMC. It also has a faster fire rate and a larger clip, which helps the gun compensate. The PDW was good at close ranges until it became unusable because of a recoil nerf. It had a 50 round clip, which meant that you could keep a fast tempo with the weapon since you didn't need to waste time reloading. The Remington shotgun is great in CQB and can be okay at close ranges. The DSR sniper is great at long ranges. The thing that's different about this gun is that it can be great at any range. It just depends on the angle that you're holding. If you're holding a close range angle, watching a doorway, that can be great. If you miss your shot though, then you're dead. It's all very situational. Based on the ranges the map provides, you'll want to respond with the appropriate weapon. Let's look at the other sections within the map category and see how they affect gameplay. Starting with cover, if a map has a lot of corners, that means there will be a lot of angles. The more angles on the map usually means there's a better for close and CQB ranges. You can play around these corners and use them to your advantage. The stock attachment also increases in value since you can strafe in and out of vision. It also means that EMPs have a higher value. EMPs are great into maps with lots of corners because you can't escape the blast radius since it goes through walls. Headies are any piece of cover that when standing behind, you can only see your head. How you counter this is by using a precision weapon. The more accurate the weapon, the better. An M8A1 is better than an AN94, and an MP7 is better than an MSMC when dealing with headies. Next, we look at bullet penetration. What type of cover is around the map and how penetrable is it? Some walls, corners, and headies are paper thin. Others are impossible to shoot through. If a map has many penetrable walls, you can counter that by using FMJ. I haven't been able to find anything online, but typically certain weapons have better bullet penetration than others. An AR will have better bullet penetration than an SMG. Even some ARs have better bullet penetration than other ARs. How open a map is will determine whether or not you will use a stun. Stuns increase in value the more open maps are. It's easier to use a stun when there isn't much cover blocking it. It's also easier to use weapons with lower levels of precision on maps with a high openness. Since there's not much cover to stand behind, it's easier to hit your shots. The last section in the map category is going to be movement. Each map's movement is broken down into 3 sections: speed, mantle, and distance. The lightweight perk gives you speed, and speed is always nice to have. It helps you move to and from cover safely. It allows you to get to locations faster. Every map demands a high level of speed, but the question is, can you forego that demand? Remember when we were comparing slums and raid and how much of a demand they had on mantling? It's the same thing here. If a map has a lot of mantle demand, such as raid or express, you should use dexterity. If it doesn't, you can get away without using it. If you're playing on a larger map or a medium-sized map with long flank routes, then I would use extreme conditioning. Stepping back over to the dependent variables, we'll look at game modes. There are 2 categories that we need to break down: the value of a player's life and the value of the objective. Starting with a player's life, the value changes based on what mode they are playing. In Hardpoint, there is little to no respawn time. In CTF, there is a 5-second respawn time, which increases the value of your life. In SnD, you have 1 life for each round. The longer you were taken out of action by dying, the higher value that your life has. You'll want to base your class on staying alive as long as possible in SnD, whereas HP, you could focus more on kills or utility. The objective value has a direct relationship proportional to a player's life. In Hardpoint, when you score 1 point, you are only getting 0.004% of the required 250 points to win. In SnD, when you score 1 point, you're getting 16.67 repeating percent of the required 6 points to win. The value of an objective is higher in SnD because of this. CTF is different. Because there's no threshold that you need to win, you can win by capturing 10 flags, but you don't need to capture 10 flags to win. Each point's value is based on the total value of flags captured that game by both teams. All this being said, in some modes, it's more important for you to stay alive. You will want to run classes to help you stay alive. In some modes, the time that you spend on the objective is valued more. You need to make classes to stay alive for those moments. Sometimes, that means resistances such as Flak Jacket or Tactical Mask. Other times, that means having classes with high movement to be able to maneuver around the map quickly and safely. It's up to you to find out what you need and respond to it accordingly. Now we're going to get into the dependent variables that affect you while you are playing. These are resistance and informational effects. Starting off with resistances, we have explosive damage and slows. Explosive damage can be from any source of explosive damage. This could be lethal grenades or even tactical grenades, explosions from trophy systems deflecting utility, vehicles or red barrels, or any other form of explosive damage. You can counter a portion of this damage by using Flak Jacket. You can partially counter it by using a trophy system to block explosive damage from lethals and tacticals. Next, we have slows. The most common will be from a stun. You can counter this by using Tactical Mask. There's one form of a slow that's impossible to counter. Anything that causes damage or an effect will take you out of a sprint. So if you get hit by a frag, stun, or EMP, it will stop you from sprinting. Even if you have perks that resist those effects, you will still be stopped from sprinting temporarily. For informational effects, you have sound, gaining, and losing information. Your character naturally makes a lot of sound moving around the map. You can counter this in SnD by running Dead Silence to block out the footsteps or at least dampen your overall sound. You can gain information by getting a hit marker with any utility. It could be a hit marker from an EMP grenade, or it could be a hit marker that your trophy system is blocking utility. You lose information by getting hit by an EMP grenade. You can also lose information by a smoke blocking vision. Remember, independent variables are your response to the game's dependent variables. You're responding with the appropriate weapon when you evaluate the range that you'll be taking gunfights at on a specific map. You're responding to the cover on a map with different weapons, attachments, and utility. You're responding to the movement allowed on the map by the perks you choose to take to maneuver around the map faster. You're responding to the value of your life or an objective by how you choose to stay alive. You're responding to different types of resistances and information through perks and utility. How this works is that you first analyze all of the dependent variables that you'll be working with. You then find the independent variables that you have control of and make a set of classes best suited for your situation. When it comes to creating your classes for the traditional meta, I recommend splitting up your class sets by mode. For SnD and Hardpoint, I have 4 class sets each, one for each role. For CTF, I just have 1 class set. For my SnD classes, I have them organized and categorized by purpose to be the same across all roles. The first class is the default class for that role. This means that it's the best representation of what the playstyle is for that role. I use the second and the fourth class when I play a spread strategy on either defense or offense. Playing spread is when your team spreads evenly across the map to play for information. It's as if there was a line drawn horizontally with teammates watching every cross. The third and fifth classes are for when I'm wanting to play more aggressively and rush. Just like the spread classes, I have them each designed for both defense and offense. The idea behind these classes are for them to be uniform across Anchor, Slayer, Support, and OBJ. This way, it easily translates between each role. Remember, I change my class depending on the speed that I want to play. This helps me prevent from having to think about which class to use. For the hardpoint classes, the concept is similar. The first class is the default class based on the role. This is the class that I would use in the middle of a game or for most of the game. It just depends on the game state. The second class, though, is what I use off spawn. It gives me an advantage even if it's minor at the very start of a game. I may only use these classes for 1 life, but that's their purpose. The third class is what I use to break hills. It's specifically designed for when we don't have control and need to get control. The fourth class is the opposite of this. It's what I use to hold hills. It's assuming that I already have a good spawn and can use a more defensive class. The classes for breaking hills typically have more speed, whereas the classes for holding have more resistances. The fifth class is my counter class. This is where I can counter what I predict to be the biggest threat in the game. It acts as a plug to fill the largest gap within the class set. I may only switch to this class temporarily for a few lives, or I might switch to it for the rest of the game. It all just depends on the game state. You may be wondering why I'm not going through each and every class, all 50 classes that I have, for example, and showing you the classes and explaining why I use them and so on. That's not my goal. My goal is to teach you how to be self-sufficient. I want you to be able to have the knowledge to be able to play the game yourself and not have to rely on other people. If you can be independent and if you can learn how to create classes yourself properly and have a good wide variety of classes to choose from, then you don't have to rely on other people. It's the same way when I coach other players in Call of Duty. I don't want to just tell them what to do. I want to teach them how to teach themselves. That's my goal. And that's the same thing that I have for you guys with these classes. Now that you've set up your classes, we are finally able to talk about rock, paper, scissors. How is this simple game that can decide who gets to ride a shotgun able to also determine how to counter a shotgun? Like I said, it's quite simple. We're going to use an MSMC class for this example. Let's say you're playing hardpoint on standoff. You'll be playing the support role, which means you'll be in the hill and slaying around the hill. The first issue I can think of with this playstyle is explosive damage. You will encounter a lot of explosive damage from vehicles blowing up. You will also encounter damage from grenades around the hill. Running Flak Jacket, which is an independent variable, is a great response to explosive damage, which is a dependent variable. In this situation, we will call explosive damage rock and Flak Jacket paper. Wait, where's the scissors? The scissors are how you counter what is countering you. The way that you counter Flak Jacket is by making it obsolete. If they are using Flak Jacket, this means one of two things. The first is that they are using it in place of lightweight. This means that they have less movement speed. You can take advantage of this by moving around the map faster and having better timings. You'll have a natural tempo advantage over them. The second thing this could mean is that they are using both lightweight and Flak Jacket. This means that they are spending 3 points in their perk 1 slot. This limits how the rest of their class is built. They have the choice of either having a third attachment, the use of lethals and tacticals, or another perk doubled up. They have a choice of just one of these. That limits how they can attack the rest of the map. Again, you attack Flak Jacket by making it obsolete. This gives them no reason to actually run it. Look at this example support class that I'm running. Imagine this is what they are using. If they have a third attachment on their MSMC, then it's probably stock. You'll know that they can't be doubled up on more perks and aren't actually running utility. This makes them vulnerable to being attacked with stuns and EMPs. They will also have a tough time getting objective control without any utility. If they are running tacticals, you know they won't have the ability to have quick strafe with stock. This narrows down how they can use the MSMC, making their playstyle more predictable. They are still vulnerable to stuns and EMPs. Let's say they are doubled up in the perk 2 slot with hardwired. Now they don't have a fast strafing speed with stock, and they have no ability to gain objective control through utility. You still have the ability to counter with stuns since they aren't using tactical mask. Your goal is to force them to change their classes as a response to your playstyle. A game should be a continuous cycle of changing classes based on what the situation calls for. If you can optimize your classes, you can get to a point where you can counter everything that they have. The game may get to a point where they don't have a response to how you're playing. This is when you keep attacking them with whatever it is that they can't respond to. At that point, you have won the metagame. That's the beauty of this game. It's a constant flow of counters and countering. It's just enough depth to get you thinking, but not too much that it becomes convoluted. Okay, so what? Everything that I've just said up to this point is obvious to most of you who have played BO2 competitively. You probably already understand how this works and what classes to use. I think you might be missing the point though. This is exactly why the BO2 meta was perfect. It was as simple as rock, paper, scissors. It allowed players to play a game within the game. There was a continuous stream of strategy that was present throughout every game. It was like nothing that we've ever seen before. The 2-class meta that's present in current CODs gets put to shame with the depth of BO2. This game's meta is almost as interesting as the game itself. When was the last time you could say that about any COD? That's why I made this video. I appreciate what this game was, what it is, and what the rest of its life will be. BO2 raised the bar for what the meta standards are. No other game has been close to upholding them. I really tried to make this video as simple as I could while still providing depth. I feel like it's convoluted, but I really won't know until I hear from y'all in the comments. Let me know what you guys think about this video. Your responses are why I keep going. It's not just that you guys are very supportive. That's great. I do appreciate it, but it's that you tell me that you appreciate these types of videos. I know the type of videos I'm making about competitive COD aren't present on YouTube. The types of videos that I'm going to make are not going to be present on YouTube. I have a list of literally hundreds of videos that I can potentially make, and no one has done them before. When I hear the type of response that you guys give me, it truly does motivate me to keep paving this narrow pathway. I would also appreciate any negative feedback, and I'm being serious. If it's honest and constructive, I will take it seriously. My goal is to make each video better than the last one in just one small way or another. That's it. That's the end of the video. I truly appreciate every single one of you guys for watching. I would shake your hand and make eye contact with you if I could. Have a great rest of your day.